right, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Oh Hell No podcast. Today, I have Gary John Bishop. He is a veteran because he's been here before. So welcome back to the Oh Hell No podcast, Gary.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be part of this today.
Yes, you were here almost 5 years ago where we talked about your New York Times best-selling book, Unfuck Yourself. Yeah, so I love that book. And I actually gave it to a student as a graduation gift too, because I thought it was perfect for, students about to go into college and
Yeah,
figure things out. You know what I mean? It's for everybody.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So today we are going to talk about your new book.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Unfucked. So guys, Gary, he is an author. He's a personal development expert, and he's an all-around cool guy. He gives it to you straight, and I love the way that he delivers messages. So let's get into it. So your book, you talk about relationships, right? And getting your relationship stuff together. And to me, this book could be applied to like all relationships, but you focus on marriage.
Yeah.
So did you write this book with hopes of helping people save their marriage or organize their mindset before getting into a marriage?
I think it's all of that, right? I think, one of the things that always kind of caught my attention was like when we get into a relationship, and you could, like you said, you could talk about a friendship in the same terms or a relationship, a member of your family, but what are we basing it on? And, if you set aside all the usual tropes, all the usual kind of tired explanation stuff, well, it's based on trust and it's based on partnership, and you set aside all that, it's all junk. None of that makes any difference when you're actually in the dirt, right, in a relationship. You're not like, well, I'm basing this on trust, right? You're basing it on something else. And if you look in the day-to-dayness of it, your relationship is based on how you feel in any given moment. And how you feel, can really change drastically over a period of time. So I really wrote this book for people to get themselves back to kind of like to like home base. To get people grounded in something again, like really like, oh, shoot, what is this about for me? Like, because we forget that, we get so wrapped up in it. So it's really like, as you would expect, a kind of in your face book that's designed for you to get yourself settled and grounded and clear about what this thing is for you.
Yeah. Okay. So you talk about why referring to the efforts that go into a marriage as work is not a term that you use, right?
Right.
So I always find myself saying, oh, marriage is work. Like I've been married. I'm celebrating. I laugh saying this because in your book too, you're like, oh, when people say, oh, I've been married for 13 years or whatever, everybody's like, oh my God, that's so great.
No, they're amazed at your ability to stick with something so miserable for so long.
Right. So I'm celebrating 13 years on Sunday, and I do absolutely feel proud. I'm like, damn, yeah, we made 13 years, but I do feel what you're saying, because I know some people who have been married longer than me, and I do not look at them as goals. Like I look at them like, when are they going to end this nightmare? Like,
right. So I think part of the deal is when it comes to relationships is, one of the things that we do refer to is, well, it takes work. And I think the minute you start using that language, it just creates, an environment, oh, it takes work. Well, really, like, should it take work, or does it take something else? Does it take exploring, or does it take commitment, or does it take, like understanding, or does it take expression? Like, is it all just work? Because I think if you thought of some of your favorite things that you do in the world in terms of well, it takes work to be, to have the time of your life. I don't think you'd be too keen on it. So that's definitely one dynamic. But the other part, as you were alluding to there, you're pointing to, I think there's just generally so much stuff in the world of relationships that we pass off as, yeah, that's true. But if you just inspect a little bit, you'll see it's actually not true, or certainly at least open to investigation or interpretation. There's a lot of just, like we say stuff like, well, a relationship takes give and take. Well, how come? Why? Why does it have to be that way? Or it's 50-50, which I take a real run at that notion in the book, the relationship's 50-50, because, it's one of those things when you scrape at it, you see that might not be such a good thing if it's 50-50. It might not go in your favor.
Yeah, it definitely may not.
Mhm.
So let's talk about being right, right? We love being right, even if it's wrong. Why
Right.
are we like this, and how can we work on this? What are your suggestions about, in a relationship, you get into a argument or disagreement or whatever, and your focus is just being right, and we've done it.
Well, so there's being right when we're wrong, but it's even worse when we're right and we know we're right.
Mm-hmm.
That's like worse. That's way worse, right? I mean, I can be right about something and then kind of know, but then I'll hang on to it anyway because it's humiliating, or I know they'll use it as some kind of weapon against me later if I admit, right? Which is such a weird thing to even say in the context of your life. Oh, you'll use this as a weapon later. Like we're in some this is how this is working out. But anyway, I say to people, look, you got to watch, like, being right is a very human thing. It's not unique to a person. It's very, very human. And when we're on that kind of horse about being right, we're getting off on it. We are. There's like a little high that comes with it especially when I know I'm right, right, and the other person's like, no, I don't right. And what we kind of fail to examine is, okay, so when I'm holding on to this being right thing right now, what's the damage that's getting done? Like, what's happening right now between me and this other person as I'm holding on to this? And it's amazing, like when again, it's one of these things when you poke at it or scratch at it a little bit with somebody, and I'll say, what if this is costing you love, right? What if this is actually getting in the way between you and this person? And it might last for an hour or 2 hours or 5 hours in a day or 2 days or 6 months. What if it's getting in the way? And all too often people are kind of like, so what? So what? They don't realize the ongoing damage we're doing because, and the dynamic between me and another, right? I've been married for 20 something years. But I know. But it's that it kind of becomes like this layers of it, like it's becoming a certain way. The dynamic is starting to build here. And it's hard to see the damage if you're not paying attention. And so I say there are definitely times in your relationship you got a choice. You're going to love this person or you're going to be right. And that really is the choice. People love to think well, it's not as simple as it is. It actually is as simple as that. There are definitely clear moments in your time. And we've all had that. We've all been like, screw you, when I know I'm right. But in that dynamic, right, the other person must always be wrong. There's no like, I'm right and you're right. Like, that's not how those conversations go. It's I'm right, you're wrong. This is it. I mean, just imagine being the wrong one.
Yeah, especially if you're the wrong one all the time.
Right. Like, oh, here I am. I'm wrong again. Okay. And by the way, it's amazing because then I can become right about that. Right. I can become right about you always making me wrong.
Right.
And there we are.
Oh my God, it's like a big mind screw. Like
I know. We can definitely get in now.
Oh my God. So managing yourself. let's talk about the importance of that when in any relationship, especially marriage, because managing yourself, like, whoo, that is a task for most people.
Right.
So
The big issue there is, I mean, the reality is personal growth work. People look at personal growth work like it's all just a way for you to make more money or something, or be calmer, right? Or get a new career or something. Personal growth work, a big part of that is finally being at peace with everything that came before this point. And I mean everything, like everything that went down in your life, like you have peace about it. Like you have so much peace about it, you could talk about it and talk about it and talk about it, and nothing. And you could actually see the people from some of those times in your life, and you've got nothing, right? Some people are like, I am at peace. I'll just never talk to that sucker again ever in my life. Like, that's not a peace. That's shoved down, hoping it doesn't come up again. But unfortunately, we don't really, by and large, in society, we don't do that kind of work. Okay, we don't just deal with, well, I'm stressed out right now, I'm gonna go see my therapist, or I'll talk to my coach, or I'll meditate more, or I'll pray, or whatever I would do. And I say to people, whatever's incomplete from your past, whatever's there, like even if it's just a little open wound or it's a gaping wound, it's coming up in your relationship. Like it's gonna come up, right? Now, it's a kind of shadowy little thing because it doesn't seem like it's that. It seems like it's you. So it seems like, oh no, that's not that thing.
yeah.
This is the jerk that I married. That's the problem, right? You don't realize your upsets are old upsets. They're just showing up in a new environment. And they'll always do that until you finally come to terms with it. Stuff like, I'll give you a little example. So stuff like, stop telling me what to tell. Or stuff like, which goes back to your childhood. What was the upset? What was the thing you took away from there? No one will ever tell me what to do. Okay, well, here we are in your marriage, right? Or stuff like, you don't care about me, or you don't love me. It comes up. Why? Because it's an incomplete item from maybe my childhood or my teens, right? Or I can't trust you. Or you'll eventually just walk out on me anyway. And on and on and on and on. And people live with the illusion like, oh, it's about finding the one. No, it's actually about dealing with the one. You got to deal with this. Because if you deal with this, whatever this is, and whatever hooks and little you have, the more powerful you'll be in relationships, and the more able you'll be, the more you'll be able to to function and dance with it and move with it as it's happening, as opposed to, just constantly getting hooked by old triggers. So it starts with kind of investigating some of that stuff and looking at that stuff and seeing how it plays out in your life as an adult. Don't blame yourself. You're not blaming anybody else. Just like, okay, this is kind of what I've been left with. How do I get that complete for myself? But most importantly, what I get into in the book is, how do I begin to manage that now? Like, given that this might be something that I get hooked by, or this is something that's been an issue for me in my past, and I'm coming to terms with it, or I'm doing the work on it. How do I manage myself? And that's that is the one thing that there's little or no attention paid to in a relationship. That is, who am I in this thing? Really, if I tell myself the truth, who am I? Am I judgmental? Am I defensive? Am I angry? Do I blame? Do I hold a grudge? How? And the one that always catches people is, I say, how do you punish them? Tell me how you punish them in an argument. How do you punish? Do you get loud? Do you insult? I'll insult you till you shut up. Or do you walk away? Right? I'll leave you there alone. Or do you give them a silent treatment? We no, I'm fine. I'm good. No. It's all withdrawing, but ultimately it always comes down to the same thing. And it's hard for some things for people to see it this way, but I invite them to take it on like this. I say, how do you punish? So when it doesn't go your way, how do you punish? Do you withdraw your love? Do you what have you taught yourself of how to protect yourself, and how do you justify it? And then I mean, it's kind of like a fur ball, you know, kind of like, oh my God. But it's got to come up. You got to get it up. You got to really address it and really, dang it, this is what I do. Oh my gosh. It's because it's never good. It's never like, oh, I just gushed them with love. No, it's always like, are you passive aggressive? Are you condescending? You know, do you create distance? And so those are the elements that you have to stop being responsible for and start managing the degree to which they're impacting the quality of your relationship.
That was so good. And I love the way that you put that. And it's so funny that you're saying this to me right now, because today I was talking to my sister and she was saying, when we grew up, my mom was very strict. She didn't let us anywhere, she's Caribbean. So she's just like,
yeah. And those island ladies, man, swear to God.
Yes, they're no joke. So my sister was like, I think it's because the way we grew up, mom was so strict that now as an adult, I like to just, when I'm out or I'm doing my thing, I don't like to be questioned, and I don't like to have to say, oh, where I am, when I'm coming back, if I'm going to be here and there and there. But she knows that, she realized that about herself, and she knows that triggers something in her. So she's like, I get very irritated when anybody, my husband or anybody starts asking me all these damn questions,
Right, because it seems like you're telling me what to do.
Right, or trying to restrict me.
Whereas the person might be like, hey, I just want to hang out with you. That's really what they're saying. Where are you going? What do you mean, where am I going? Oh, I don't know. Maybe it's
true. When she said that, though, I was like, oh my God, maybe that's why I'm like that too. Because I don't like answering a bunch of questions. Like, it drives me insane,
Maybe that's why you ask the questions.
Probably, yeah, I think so. But I think that once you can identify these things, then you can learn to manage your response and how you engage with people.
Right. It's really about, look, to me, that's awareness.
Yeah. So
that's the most valuable work you've ever done. You're like, I know what this machine does, and I know how it will destroy things, and it'll undermine things, and it'll take away, in its quest for survival, it'll take away all that really matters to me. Like when you take away all the noise and the junk that people have in their heads about, what should happen, shouldn't happen in their past, and how things are supposed to be in the future, and take all that away. People just want to love the people in their life, and they want to experience love, and they want to share it, and they want to connect, and they want to make a difference. And I know that sounds kind of like, like a little Hollywood, but that really is the truth. If you took away all your worries, and then what do you want to do? You want to be with the people you love. You want to be with them. You just want to be with them. You want to be around them. And then, so like, for instance, when the person you love maybe isn't being the way that you want them to be, what you're really saying is, I just want you to be the person that I love. But it comes out like, what's wrong with you? What's your problem? right. But really what I'm saying is, I want to be with a person that I love, like, this is what I want to share this moment with you. And that's part of the deal too, that I talk in the book. I say to people, you have to learn and love all of that, like the whole thing. It's like living in New Jersey, right? You live in New Jersey. You get cold weather, you get hot weather, you get traffic, you get whatever you get. That's New Jersey.
Yeah. Right.
And you might look at that and go, I love living in New Jersey. And that's the whole of New Jersey. You don't get to cherry pick and be like, oh, well, that's terrible. And I'll just take this bit. And that's what we do with people. We do that with people. We're like, I want you to be, there's times in our relationships when we're literally asking the person that we're married to in a relationship, we're basically saying to them, you should be someone else right now. Don't be you. I only want that version of you. This one, you should change all of that.
Horrible.
You got to get the absurdity of it now. I know, but that's basically what we're asking them. We're saying to them,
No, it's absolutely 100% true. You know,
right. And imagine somebody saying that to you, right? That's the other thing that I always find really weird about it. I'm like, imagine somebody came up to you and like, when you're like that, you're great. See the rest of it. Let's work on you changing that. Imagine you'd be like, what? What do you mean? You
like,
know,
oh, hell no.
right? Exactly. Right. I mean, we really would. We really would. But as long as we kind of shroud it in the right language, we actually find a way to suggest those kinds of things to the people that we love. And to me, they really, and the thing that it surprises me as a human being, and as I get older and I discover and I keep doing the work on myself, I've found the real key is like discovering my partner, like finding new things. That do I still have some of the same junk hanging around? Yeah, but it doesn't dominate my life the way that it did. You know, it just doesn't. I have a much bigger say in my experience of myself and how my relationship goes. And one of the big things, and I do discuss this in the book, it made a difference for me in my relationship, but it's not in the book because of my relationship. It's in the book because it's a philosophy, it's a way of living life.
Mhm.
And that is that I let my wife off the hook for being anything but herself. Like I don't, she's not supposed to be some way, you know, which again, if you peel back all the drama, that's a lot of the times that's what we're asking people in our lives. We're saying you should be different. And it's a bit of a thing, you know, when you say to somebody, I want you to be different. I think if you're at that point in a relationship and you're really down the rabbit hole with it, it's not a good sign. And so you know, a number of years ago, I had the conversation with my wife, and I just said, I don't need you to be anybody. I just, you know, you just be yourself, you know, and I'll work that out. And I'll work that out.
That's an awesome thing. You should be able to be yourself with your partner. That's what I love about my husband. He lets me be my crazy, kooky self, and he's just quiet and just like whatever, you know?
Yeah.
So guys, just so you know, like all of these areas that I'm touching, it's in Gary's book. Like he goes into detail in all these areas. Okay. So now we're going to talk about foundation. I think this is very important. What do you say about relationships that start in an unusual way, like sex-based or cheating or stuff like that?
Right.
Do you think those
Right.
relationships have a chance to kind of build and withstand that?
Yeah, I mean, they do. They absolutely do, right? I mean, people bump into each other in the subway, you know, and some people it's physical attraction. But at some point, there's going to have to be a little more than just that, you know, and that might still be, I mean, that are, you know, people have, you know, intimate, you know, deeply, you know, deeply intimate sexual relationships with a partner 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, right? And still find their partner like incredibly attractive. So
Yeah.
that stuff definitely lasts. But there's got to be more. It's got to be grounded in something, you know, there's got to be some kind of thing that you're organized around, you know, like what is it? How do I approach this thing called this relationship? Where am I coming from? It can't just be, wow, you're hot, you know. There's got to be a little something more there. And one of the things, again, I think a lot of the times in this book, I'm poking a stick at some of the things we've come to believe to be true about relationships, like, oh, we should have lots in common. That's nonsense. That's just not true. You know, I mean, I'm nuts about soccer. What am I looking for? Another soccer player? Like, you know, like you know, my wife has like got a kind of passing, you know, interest in that, but she's got stuff that she loves to do, you know. So then that nonsense, like, and be, by the way, even on some like fundamental life things, we don't have share the same view. You know, she's like, well, fundamentally, I think people should be blah blah blah. And go, okay, good, I get that. That's not how I see it, but I get it, right? So there's no, but that kind of goes back to this thing where she doesn't have to be anybody but herself. right? I mean, I can be married to this person and we don't have the same view about it. And that includes, by the way, sometimes in even the raising of our children. She's like, well, I think we should do this. And I'm like, okay, I don't. I think we should do this. So we need to work this out.
Yeah, that's
So
definitely something that always comes up.
yeah, well, and it's okay though.
Yeah.
Again, like you don't walk into Starbucks and expect it to smell different than coffee. And I use that analogy a lot. It's like you don't walk in like, I wonder what it's going to smell like today, right? It's going to smell like coffee.
Yeah.
So to be in a relationship means having different opinions. I mean, what were you expecting? Like a different, like, oh no, we should all see things the exact same way. Or, this is something I can't get past. And what most people are talking about is it's not something you can't get past. It's that you can't live with them having that view. They need to change it rather than having that view. And I say, no, it's not. It's okay, and even then, if like, another thing I talk about in the book is like disagreeing or arguing. I'm like, I'm fine with arguing. Like, I'm fine. Go ahead, argue. It's okay.
Yep.
There's this big thing like, oh, you should never go to bed angry. I'm like, go to bed angry if you want. You go to bed if you want. But here's the deal. It doesn't mean the end of something.
Right.
It's not like we've argued. Oh my God, or we've argued 3 times this week. I just say, it's okay to argue. Just don't make it a lifestyle, right? It's okay to argue. It's okay to be upset with each other. It's okay to lose your stuff. It's okay. Don't turn it into something else. Don't then attach, oh, in that argument, you said that clearly you don't love me. It doesn't necessarily mean that, right? Or that we argue means we don't love each other. It doesn't mean that. But by the same token, if it's getting out of hand and it's becoming a lifestyle, then there might be items in there that you're going to have to unpack them and deal with whatever the thing is and get to the bottom of it and handle it. Mm-hmm. But everything is handleable. Everything is. I've met a lot of situations in my career. I haven't met a situation that you couldn't handle in a conversation.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's just how you deal with it. And I wanted to segue into values, because you brought up like, having kids and then sometimes you guys disagree on things. Talk about that in the book too, about values and, growing up with one set of values and this person having their values. What do you think about that in a marriage? Like, okay, you have your values, I have mine. Can they intermingle? Can we make new ones?
Yeah, well, the interesting thing that I wanted people to get is when some most people say they have values, right? But if you actually ask them what they are, they kind of struggle. They'll tell you like 1 or 2 things, and they're kind of like, and faith, and they just say they can't really identify. So one of the things that I talk about in this book is you need to identify like what is it you value as a human being? What is it like when it's all said and done? This is the sort of stuff that really matters to me, right? Now, one of the kind of superstitions that I want people to deal with, people say they have a value, when really what they're saying is, this is how I want my partner to behave.
Okay.
So they'll say like, oh, I value trust. Oh, I value honesty, which is basically code for don't lie to me. Right? So I don't really value it. It's really like I'm looking for it, right? I flip the whole thing with values in this book, and I really flip it in a very powerful way for people to say, if it's something you value, it's now your job. Mm-hmm. So if you value love, all right, there you go. It's your job. You got to love them. Oh, I value trust. All right, good. You got to trust them. Oh, I value adventure. All right, well, you got to bring that to the table. And that's a big flip, because usually in relationships, what we're doing is looking for that.
Yes.
I'm looking for love. I'm looking for trust. I'm looking for this passion. Oh, there's no passion in a relationship. Well, it's your job. Mm-hmm. And that's a hard thing for people to hear. And they're like, And part of the reason why it's difficult for people to hear, because they say, well, I am the loving one, but then they, and then I say, you've blown it.
Yep.
Because your values, you express your values just for the sake of expressing. It's not to make something else happen. And that's where it becomes manipulation. It's like, oh, I'm the one who always does all the loving. And then I say, well, hold on a minute.
I hate that always.
Right.
Always word, right? I hate it.
Right. But people say this, I always tell them I love them, and they never give it back to me.
Yeah.
That's manipulation. That's like the thing that, like my aunt used to do, right? I love you. Right.
Right.
I'm like 10, like, she's like waiting for me to say it, right? Which is really just, she should really just say to me, I want you to say you love me. That's it, right? I don't need to do this other thing. So, but in relationship, we're very much like that. We're very much a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
But really what's in the background is, I'm going to be this way. And what I'm looking for is for you to be that way when I'm this way.
Yeah.
That's not how it works. And that's where we get messed up. We get messed up in relationships like that, rather than love is really important to me. And this is something I discovered years ago with my own family, actually, with my sisters and my mom. I realized that I wanted to have a loving family, and I kept waiting for them to bring it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, why aren't we loving? And I'm noticing, like, oh, I'm being annoyed about this love thing. So then I really started to take on, like, well, what if it's just my job to be loving? What if this is my game? It's my game to be the loving guy. And the minute I got that with my family years ago, I transformed my whole family, because I was just going to be loving and you were just going to be yourself. And so the whole environment changed.
Yes.
And it's the same if you're married or in a long-term relationship. It's going to reflect the way you are, whether you're aware of the way you are or not.
Yeah, it's like that saying, be the change that you want to see.
Oh my gosh. I mean, that gets thrown, that's like a bumper sticker that everybody throws around. But there's like a profound truth to that.
Yeah.
Right? Like who I am with people is compassionate, inspirational, loving, honest. That's who I am with people. I used to spend my life trying to find people who were that way with me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, what am I doing? Like, what's this about? Like, this is about me expressing something, and that really is love. Like, and people don't like to hear this when I say it. I'm like, you don't receive love. You experience it. You experience it. And even when somebody does something, you're generating all of that. You're like, oh my gosh, it's so nice. But you're doing all of that. That whole feeling you're having, you're doing that, right? It seems like the other person's doing it, but it's not. You're interpreting and you're generating and you're bringing something to life in a moment. And so I say, if love is important to you and love is critical to you and it matters to you, then you should love like there's no tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. I love it. So tell us about your 90-10 rule and why it's effective.
Right. So in the book, I talk about, like, I went into this arguing thing, and I said, if you think about the amount of time you spend with your partner, right, and just if you actually add it up, because people are like, oh, I'm with my partner all the time. No, you're not. No, you're not. Like, I mean, I'm an at-home author. My wife is a stay-at-home mom, and we're around the house together all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But if I added up all the actual time that we're together, like she's doing her thing, I'm over here doing my thing, I'm writing, I'm on the phone, she's, doing all kinds of stuff around this house and dropping kids off and all that. I'm actually talking about the amount of time we're together. If I added up all the months, it might be a few hours per day.
Yep.
Maybe 3 or 4 hours a day, right? And that might include a movie in that 3 or 4 hours. Mm-hmm. That we're actually together and talking. Right, I added up all the minutes. So then, let's say if both couples are working, or one of them's at home and the other one's at work, it might not even be as much as 3 hours. It could be 2 hours. Where you're actually talking and together. You might be in the same house, but I mean actually talking together. And I say, well, let's say 2 hours, so 120 minutes. And you should then be, if you want to have an argument with that person, it should be no longer than 10% of the time. So 120 minutes, that's a 12-minute argument. So you should have a 12-minute argument. You want to have an argument? 12 minutes. You have 12 minutes to go. Right? Get all that. But it should never go beyond the 12 minutes. And people are like, well, that's ridiculous. And I say, well, so is your freaking arguing.
Yeah.
So is you're insisting that I should have longer to argue with this person that I love. This is terrible. Only 12 minutes? What am I supposed, how am I supposed to, well, do you get how absurd this is getting? So, but there is a truth to it, like there's a massive time that we are together. There's a kind of, and the nature of those conversations is their experience of a relationship with one another. So I say, well, if it's 90% of the time, you should talk about what works and what connects you and what you appreciate and what you enjoy and what really connects you to this person. And the more you talk about that, the more you'll experience that.
Yes, I love it. That is good. 12 minutes. That's it, people. That's all you get. 5 minutes each.
Exactly. Let loose for 5 minutes and then it's I love you. Okay, let's watch a movie.
So deal breakers. So I think people have a lot of struggle with this. I feel like even in looking for love, right? People have these things and, like, oh, I don't want this. I don't want that. I don't want this. So my deal breaker is cheating, right? I know a lot of people, they say, oh, well, we've worked past cheating or whatever, but the way that I'm set up, Gary, the mental would not be cheating, right? I would be like a psychopath. And I know that about myself. So I can't handle that. So I always say that to my husband, like, that's the big deal breaker for me.
Right.
Do you think it's effective to tell your spouse what the deal breaker is, or do you think you should just shut up about that? And
well, I think it's critical that you're clear about it, but there's pieces to it I think you need to work out for yourself. So sometimes people say, and what you're talking about is a very common one, infidelity, right? So that, if you ever went and you were with somebody else, that would be a deal breaker for me. But then the question I always ask people is, well, what do you mean by deal breaker? Mm-hmm. Right? So people usually go to, we're done. Well, you can't say that forever. You can say that right now, and you can say that really powerfully right now and really believe that right now and be like, no, I'm certain. But 10 years from now, or 16 years from now, and you're a long way into your life with this other person, and there could be children and grandparents and family and aunts and uncles and friends and a business, and there's a massive stuff there.
Yeah. So
I say to people, you got to stop saying, I'm done. Right, that's the point when I'm done. And I think the reason why people are so afraid that it has to be that way is they feel as if it prevents something from happening, and it doesn't. Right, it doesn't. It's like, oh, if I really let them know though that I'm done, they won't do it. Well, that's not accurate. That's just, if that was true, then that's all we'd have to do. Just tell people, yeah, that, and that. You do that, we're done. That means we're going to be married forever. Well, no, it doesn't. So then what is a deal breaker? In the context of this book, I say to people, try on the idea that your current relationship is an agreement. It's an agreement between you and them. Whether you've said it or not said it, there's an agreement there that you'll be you and they'll be them. And that's kind of like the framework. Some of it's said, some of it's unsaid. Mm-hmm. And I say to people, a deal breaker is when you're saying to that person, I'm actually going to take a look at this agreement to see if it's something I'm going to stick with. And I might not stick with it. This actually might be the end of this for me. But I want you to know that if something like that happens, the agreement that we had to that point is over. It's not the same agreement now. So, and I use the context of marriage in the book. I talk about your vows, and I say, I promise to love, honor, and cherish you. Well, if you go and, do something with somebody else, that promise that I made you that's on hold. I'm not going to love on it and cherish you right now. I need to work my way through this. And I might come to the conclusion with, yeah, I'm done. Like I can't build anything from here. But then I might say, no, I'm going to work through it. But in my experience, the people that work through it have never done the work in the way that you need to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you do it? Well, how you do it is you declare the old agreement complete. And it became complete in the moment that that thing happened, right? I'm declaring this agreement. This agreement is over, right? It's over. And that process of declaring that agreement over, you need to get to the bottom of blame and resentment, and all of that stuff needs to come up like an existential vomit, right? You need to get all that up and handled. And you can do that. And sometimes it takes days and it's pretty intense. Sometimes it's weeks, but you can actually get to the bottom of that. When you're finally done with and complete with the old agreement, you're at a spot where you're saying, I'm ready to create an agreement with you. It's not about now I have to try and find trust or something. No, I've completed that for myself. I've done that work. And now I'm saying, I want to create something new with you. And they're saying, I want to create something new with you. Now it's a new thing. It's not the old thing.
Right.
And I think that's where people get messed up. That because what the new thing they create is to try and overcome the old thing. And I say, no, the old thing's dead. It's gone.
Yeah.
So now it's about if you're still there and you're still standing, then the only option then is to say, we need to create something new, something that works for both of us. And that old model, that thing we had, it's gone. And that's when you can then either step out there in the aftermath of dealing with a deal breaker, or in fact, it could be the end.
Yeah.
And that's okay too. And that's a big thing that I want people to get in this book. You know, you don't just slavishly hang in there because you're embarrassed or the impact that it might have. You deal with your reality. You deal with what you're really dealing with.
Yes. And that's what I was going to ask you. If there's one thing that you want people to take away from this book, what is the one thing? If we're like really dense and we just, you know,
yeah.
What do you want?
I want people to get like, I don't care how bad it's gotten for you or how dull it's gotten or how distant you've become or how broken it seems. You can actually create magic. You know, you have the ability, it's there. We get so wrapped up in it, you know, we get so up to our eyeballs in it. Even sometimes when we're in a relationship, and I think the biggest damage that we can do in a relationship is when it's just dead. It's not even like there's argument, it's like you're beyond that.
Yeah.
There's nothing. There's no fire, there's nothing. It's one of the things about being in a relationship with me, it's always fiery. But really, like it's I want people to understand, like you can create and you can create magic, and you can create magic anywhere you go. But it does take you examining, and it does take you unpacking, and it does take you looking at the hard things and accepting some things that maybe you hadn't accepted, and then being clear about, you know, what is it you really want this thing to be about, and then it becomes about something. Because at the beginning of every relationship, you know, everybody's up to something. Everybody's like, oh, you're great, and I'm great, and we're great, and this can be awesome. And then that kind of dies. And I say to people, you can have that. You can have that kind of creative juice back for yourself if you want it.
Yeah, because too, I think like a lot of things that you outlined in your book, people aren't doing those things, you know, they're not doing the work.
Well, we're not. Look. I mean, we're in a relationship with somebody, right? We could be in this relationship for maybe 10 years. And if we sit and ask ourselves, like, what is it that really matters to me? And I say, well, love really matters to me. And love is the common one, of course. But how much of your day is about loving that person? I mean, really, how much of your day is about loving them? Just loving them. You know, And I demonstrate my love, not like that kind of vague love where I do things and you're supposed to know that that's love, right? But I'm actually obvious about it. I'm obvious about my love for you, my appreciation for you. Um, and that's a big thing for people to really understand. Like, you got to stop the big mystery game too. You got to be obvious, right? It's got to be like, anybody could understand. Like, I could stand from a distance and know that you're loving this person, right? And it can't be like, well, I mean, I took the garbage out 3 times. Like, what? That was love. I missed it. Dang it. Right?
Yeah, no, that's not hitting it.
No, that's not gonna do the job.
No, not at all. I love it. I think this is a wonderful book, and I think you guys should definitely get it. Gary, I want you to share your oh hell no moment with us. I know you probably had a lot of oh hell no moments since we last spoke.
Yeah.
Share one that you learned something, it changed your perspective on something, maybe.
Yeah.
Tell me.
Yeah, I had a very recent one actually where, I have a big commitment to people. And it's a massive commitment. Like, I love people and I want people to live great lives. And I had a moment in the last couple of months where I realized that it was starting to kind of be received by people as a sign maybe of like weakness, or like that I wasn't, and so they could be any way with me and do anything with me. And I eventually just had to say that, no, this is unacceptable. This won't work. I'm not going to be this person where you can just show up and, like, be that way with me. And I'm going to just be like, okay, well, I understand you're in a tough spot. I say, no, like, there's a certain kind of level of integrity that's involved here. And it was a very difficult decision to make. But what I decided to do in that moment was, and I'd been really generating this connection and this relationship. And I just said, I'm not generating this relationship anymore. I'm not. And if you want to have a relationship with me, fine, you'll need to generate it. But I'm not going to generate this with you, because either you don't know what to do with it, or you're just not taking it in the way that it's intended. And I was very clear about it. And, like, I'm one of these people, I'm very forgiving and I'm very understanding, I'm definitely one of those guys. But sometimes in our environment, in our world, you have to be really clear about, not everybody's going to receive that in the way that you're intending it to go out. So
yeah,
I'm sorry, that's the way it goes.
Yeah, you said, oh hell no.
Oh hell no. No, you can't show up in my life like that, right? It doesn't work. I'm not going to make you wrong for it. I don't judge you. I'm not going to gossip about you. I'm not going to make you got to do what you got to do. You just ain't doing it here.
That's right. I love it. I'm like that too, Gary. I don't have time for the foolishness and the tomfoolery. So if I see something funky going on, I'm out.
Yeah, I got you.
You got to protect your mental health, and just it's a lot of energy when people are moving funny,
Yeah. I think, look, if when you kind of get into the background of human beings, everybody's working from some kind of position. It's not all deviant and nasty, but a lot of it is wrapped up in their junk from their past.
Yes.
And I get it. I understand, again, very understanding in that way. But I can't have it be coming out in such a way where it's starting to impact the quality of my life. And the people around me, and the things that I got to be responsible for. So it was just one of those situations where I looked at it, I'm like, this doesn't work, and it's unworkable, and I'm not willing to give this any more energy than I've given it.
Yeah, good for you. I love it. All right, so tell us where we can connect with you and purchase your book.
Yeah.
This is such a nice cover too.
I know, we really took our time with that thing. I'm really proud of it. We took our time to get it.
My daughter said, she's 12, and she was like, "This is a very nice book."
Yeah, it's a great cover, and we work with our design people, because sometimes, my publishers are amazing. They're brilliant people. And but I'm so like, I'm all over this. I'm all over like the title and the cover and the colors and I'm all over that. So they
Good.
were so great, and they were so generous, and they said, look, why don't you just work with your design people, come back with what you've got, and we'll go from there. And I worked with my design people for about 3 weeks, and we presented it to them, and they loved it. So, but you can get the book everywhere you can get books. So, in Barnes and Noble and Amazon and all those places, Books a Million, you can get a book. You can get it in Target, Walmart, and airport bookstores. You can get the audio book, which is me. I do all the audio books. And then you can connect with me on Instagram. You can connect with me on Facebook. I've got a lot of followers on Facebook, actually, believe it or not. And on Twitter. I'm on Twitter a little bit, but mostly Instagram. You'll find me on. And then I have my podcast, which where my podcast is really like I'm an agony uncle for people. So you give me your questions, and I just basically rip them apart every week. Every
Oh, I
Tuesday.
love that.
Yeah. So, but people give me like some pretty intense life situations they're dealing with. So it's a good way for people to see how not only my philosophy works, but it's really easy to kind of work your own stuff out when you're hearing somebody else getting their stuff kind of unpacked. You're like, oh, you'll hear the similarities in your own life.
Oh, I love it. I'm gonna check that out, Gary. I didn't know you had a podcast.
Yeah, we got a lot of listeners. It's not a long podcast. It's maybe only 20, 25 minutes a week, but it's pretty heavy stuff. It's
Oh, I'm
pretty
definitely
popular.
listening.
Yeah.
I might send in a question.
All right. Yeah. Send it in. Give me your question.
Well, as always, it was a pleasure having you on the podcast. I'm glad this time we got to see each other because our first interview we didn't. So this was fun. Thank you so much for coming back, and take care of yourself.
All right, Keisha. Thanks so much. Brilliant.
All right.